Hi, and welcome to another episode of Lights, Camera, Clicks. We had some technical difficulties, but we're hopefully back on and running. My name is Matt. I am joined here today with co-owner of Ad House Advertising and Edit House Productions, Kim Smith. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're very excited to be doing this. Last time on our first episode, we talked with Mr. Smith.
I know him well.
You know him well,
I
yes. We talked with him about a little bit of his history and background, and we went over kind of an in-depth overview of Edit House Productions, how the company started, how Ad House Advertising started. So I wanted to sit down with you and kind of get your backstory of how you came from growing up on ranches in South Dakota to your triumphs in advertising and creating one of the largest advertising agencies in New Mexico. So let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
Tell me about your childhood.
Well, I lived in several states as a kid, usually on farms and ranches, or on the edge of a small town. So when I was about 13, we moved to South Dakota and bought a ranch that was about 800, 900 acres. And there was some cropland there, but also a lot of pasture land and a lot of cattle and a lot of sheep. At one point, we even had baby pigs that we raised, and those little things are so cute. But then they grow up and they get very mean.
Yeah.
But the ranch was hard work. I mean, it was a lot of work, and the recent cold snap that we experienced over the last few days across much of the United States, that's nothing unusual. I commonly remember wind chills of 50 to 75 below zero in the winter, and we had to go out and get tractors started and feed cattle and break ice and try to safeguard the livestock during all those blizzards. So there was a lot of hard work on the ranch, but it also taught me the value of hard work, of making sure that things got done. In that case, if you weren't careful, if you didn't follow through on something, it could have been a life or death situation, and that included people.
Yeah.
To make sure that when we went out to the barns and corrals, there were times that you had to make sure you were following ropes to make it to that destination. So
Wow.
it was an interesting time. It was something I wouldn't ever want to not have part of my story, but I also am very glad I don't still live where the wind and the blizzard conditions are like that.
So you were on this farm or on this ranch doing all of this hard manual labor at 13. Where did that turn? Where did you go from there?
Well, I mean, that lasted all through high school. I actually graduated from high school a year early, not necessarily because I wanted to leave the ranch and the hard work, but because my folks were thinking of moving to Texas, and I did not like the idea at all of starting over in what would have been my senior year at a new place and a new school. And so I thought, why not just combine my junior and senior years? And, that was before the age of the internet. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't take online classes. I actually had to take correspondence courses from a university and get the permission of the school board to take my extra credits that way. So that was an interesting year to take both my junior and senior year together.
I'm sure. What interest did you have then? You're finishing high school a year early. Where did you see yourself in kind of a career? What were you interested in?
I knew that I was. I liked to write. I was a good kind of creative writer that came very easily to me. I didn't particularly enjoy algebra and math classes. It was a struggle to get through calculus as a correspondence course, I'll tell you. But I kind of gravitated toward communication and English and things like that. And 5 of us from my high school actually took a a road trip, which I don't know how our parents ever let us do this, but we took about 4 or 5 days, 5 of us in one vehicle. We all lived, thank goodness. And we went and toured 3 or 4 different colleges across South Dakota. And one of my classmates was very interested in broadcasting. And so we went and saw the studio, what it was at the time, at the University of South Dakota, and talked to the head of the department. And it was like a light bulb kind of went off in my head. And I thought, boy, this is really cool. I never thought about, television and how everything for TV has to be written, whether it's news or commercials or the programming that we see on prime time.
So you kind of came at that as a different perspective of not wanting to be on camera, but even then being behind camera and doing some of the writing.
Well, at first I kind of thought maybe I did want to be on camera.
Okay.
Maybe in news or in weather and meteorology. I actually deliberately chose a minor in college of earth science, thinking that meteorology was kind of cool.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I enjoyed the bit of news that I was involved with, but that was still in the college level. I sort of became the news director of our daily 30-minute live newscast that we produced through the university that went out over the cable access channel. And so all of the journalism students were, as they advanced in their college classes, would become reporters. And as I kind of advanced, and by that time, a whole new studio and production facility had been built at the university, and it was really very cool. And so they offered me a teaching assistantship if I would stay, and I'm like, well, yeah. Absolutely.
So you're running basically a TV station at that point.
The news side.
The news side. Are you competing with other, NBC, ABC affiliates out in South Dakota at that point still? Or?
No, I mean, Vermillion, South Dakota, where the University of South Dakota it was at least a town of 10 or 12,000 people, and half of that was college students. There certainly were TV markets, from Sioux Falls and Sioux City that were the primary stations there. Yeah. But this was all broadcast on a cable access channel, although we would certainly hear from people in the community. I mean, we covered it as if it were a real TV news department. And so if a store was opening, that might become a news story. And we would hear about things like that from the community. So it kind of gave me a sense of the power of television. And that is something that over time really fascinated me.
Yeah.
To see the power of mass communication. And, before the age of the internet and streaming, 30 years ago, it was a very different world in television and in communication. And it was the power of what drew us all together. One of my first memories involving television was the moon landing, the very first moon landing. And we never had a TV before that. And my dad went out and bought a black and white TV. Now, I think there were color sets by then.
Yeah.
But he wasn't going to spend the money on color. And so to see that.
Yeah.
And then to begin to realize that the things that were happening around the world. I remember Walter Cronkite giving the news, and each night giving the casualty count from the Vietnam War.
Wow.
I remember very clearly my dad coming in and asking me to come to the living room to watch Richard Nixon's resignation speech as president.
Yeah.
And he said, Kimberly, because that's what he usually called me, was Kimberly. He said, you need to see this. This is a record moment in American history. to have a president resign. And so that sense of how television gave us all our information and pulled
And
us
it really,
together.
yeah, it really brought people together. I think nowadays it's much more commercialized and focused on what can be sold, but television started as, I think, a way to really bring people together. I mean,
Absolutely.
the moon
And I think
landing.
it all kind of started to change in the 1980s as cable news networks began, and they began to be very polarized.
Yeah.
And the programming was very polarized. And I'm not sure I don't think that's been a benefit to us as consumers of information.
We are here with co-owner of Ad House Advertising and Ad House Productions, Kim Smith. If anyone has questions for Kim, we will be taking those at the end of today's episode. So go ahead and send those, and we'll answer those at the end. So you're running a news program in South Dakota. How did you get from there to where you are now? What was the next step?
Pardon me. The next step, when I finished my master's degree, having kind of run the news station in the university and worked with undergrad students, I thought that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that. I loved moments where a student kind of, you can almost see it in their eyes, where they kind of get something. It just locks in. And so I applied at several colleges around the Midwest as an instructor. And lo and behold, right out of grad school, but with several years of experience working in radio news, I kind of left that part out, I was offered a position as an instructor of radio, TV, film at Fort Hays State University in Hays, Kansas.
What year was this?
This was the fall, the 1984-85 school year.
Okay.
And as I recall, I was 22 years old. And I had been working at the radio station on campus, actually since I was 17, because I went to college early.
Yeah.
And so I had several years of experience, but I was 22 years old. And it was a little hard because there were students in the classes that some were older than I was. And one very very clear memory is a gentleman who, after class one day, said, "Let's get one thing straight. I'm 37 years old, and I know more than you."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Oh." And I said, "Well, I'm sure you do in a lot of things, but when it comes to this particular class, I'm hoping you learn a few things, and I'm sure you'll let me know if you do or don't."
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to say?
Yeah. Wow. So you're transitioned into teaching. Can you tell me a little bit about how you met Ed and how that all came together?
Well, we actually met in a hospital room. The director of the radio, TV, film department, as soon as I had arrived in Hays, Kansas, I was told that he was hospitalized with a collapsed lung. And so I went to the hospital to see him.
Yeah.
And Ed Smith was there. And Ed was in his final semester, I believe, as a grad student, and he was going to take over some of the director's classes.
Okay.
And so that's how we met. It was just kind of a happenstance, and had no idea that this was going to be somebody that I spent the rest of my life with.
Yeah. Was the director okay? Did he come out of the hospital?
He
all right?
he did. He recovered from the collapsed lung. Came back to teach, and I was there in that radio, TV, film department for 2 school years.
Wow. So how did you get out of teaching then and into your next role?
I applied for a position at a community college that was about an hour away, and we were planning a wedding, and Ed was looking at moving from the TV station where he worked in Hayes. And so we both took jobs in a community about an hour away called Great Bend. And I went to work at a community college. And so as part of that, I was writing articles like for the newsletters, news releases that would go out. If a student had a big accomplishment, we'd write a news release and send to their hometown papers and such. But also, and the primary reason that they hired me was because I had video experience. I could produce things. I could shoot my own material and write my own scripts and produce PSAs and things like that. But also, that college had a sizable grant from a personal injury attorney, as I recall. And he had made a lot of money from some case where there had been like police negligence in investigating a crime.
Okay.
And so his mission became to train law enforcement and first responders on like crime scene techniques to protect evidence.
Yeah.
And he developed a series of seminars where law enforcement people from all over the state of Kansas would come and learn about whatever the topic was. And so part of my job was to record these and produce these into a long format program so that those who couldn't attend could still receive the information.
Wow, that sounds very familiar, like a client we have.
And it was very interesting, and it was very gruesome because there were lots of details and lots of photos of the horrendous things that can happen in violence, in crimes, and it was intense. And part of my brain could go, this is really cool because I'm making something to train people and improve society.
Yeah.
But then about the time that I became pregnant, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is too much. And so that's why about 2 years there. And by that point, actually, Ed had been transferred to the TV station, the hub in Wichita. And he was working in Wichita while I was still working in Great Bend the last 2 months that I was pregnant. So that was interesting. I actually had to page him and say, honey, I need you to drive home that 2 hours because I'm going into labor. Oh. And he had to leave a production and drive through construction zones where they're waving him down through the ditch to get him on his way.
Oh, wow.
So that was interesting. So we ended up in Wichita. Mm-hmm. And we were there for 6 years.
Is that where you met Joel? How did you meet Joel?
Yes. Our dear friend Joel Nolet was at the TV station where Ed worked, and we've known Joel now for decades.
Yeah. So you guys worked at that station there in Wichita, or Ed did, for 6 years. What made you move to New Mexico?
Well, so while we were in Wichita, I opened my own agency, and I always kind of want to put that in quotes. Like I was a baby agency. I was doing some things for clients, newsletters and print pieces and things, and then I would do quite a lot through the TV station. Their salespeople would want somebody to help produce a commercial, and so I'd get to know that business. I got started with Rent-A-Center and Pizza Hut, producing long format and training videos and things like that.
That's huge.
And that was kind of your first introduction to TV, because you would go on shoots with me when you were as young as 2 weeks old, or we'd be in an edit session and you'd be in a playpen while Ed and I worked on the project. But also it gave me a lot of time to, be a mom.
Yeah.
And and that was needed because Ed was often working 60 to 80 hours a week. And he was contracted. There wasn't any place else in Wichita he was going to be able to go. And we just kind of got tired of the grind that television takes.
Yeah.
Because, television is kind of like, it's a countdown. It's a clock that never stops. And when a newscast has to happen, there have to be people there to run it.
Yeah.
And when, and then you deal with equipment issues and, breaking news issues.
You go live at 10 o'clock, not 10:03.
Theoretically, unless you've got an equipment problem, and then you have to figure it out.
Like this morning.
Yes. So we kind of looked at it and went, maybe it's time to step away from television and this consuming entity that was keeping Ed away from home way too much. Mm-hmm. And by that point, in about 1994 or so, my mom and dad had moved to Rio Rancho, and Ed's mother and grandmother had left Kansas and moved to Rio Rancho.
Wow.
And so it was like, we're 13, 14 hours away from family. Mm-hmm. And the only way that's ever going to change is if we're not tied to 2 weeks a year of vacation and an 80-hour work week. And so Ed actually studied for his real estate exam because my dad was a commercial, he was in real estate, farms and ranches more than anything. But he owned a company, and we had talked with him and my mom. And so Ed and I kind of decided, well, let's go down this path of controlling our own destiny.
Absolutely.
And so he flew to New Mexico, passed his real estate licensure test on his first try, came back to Kansas, and we began to make plans to move. And I think that took a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah.
But we arrived in New Mexico on Memorial Day weekend in 1995.
And you were in Rio Rancho, correct? But then moved to Roswell and then moved back.
Well,
our
my mom and dad had moved to a little town in northern New Mexico called Las Vegas, and so we'd visited there a number of times. Mm-hmm. Beautiful town. Love the history of Las Vegas. So that's where we started.
Yeah.
That's not an easy place to sell real estate when you're not, I think, a native Las Vegan. And so we actually went to Roswell. And I remember walking down the sidewalk in Roswell and realizing there was a TV station there.
Oh, boy.
And it was like, maybe this is kind of a God thing, that there's an avenue.
Yeah.
And we actually walked in that day and just said, gosh, we're thinking about moving to Roswell. Didn't realize there was a TV station here. And the person that we spoke to said, well, welcome to Roswell. Are you looking for jobs? And I said, well, yes, I am. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I've written and, produced for television and have a bit of background in broadcast news. And he said, let me introduce you to our sales manager.
Ooh.
And so that's how I met Andy Wyatt. And over the years, Andy hired me in Roswell, and later I actually hired him in Albuquerque. But that's how I ended up in broadcast sales, mm-hmm. which was quite a surprise to me because I never, ever, ever thought I would do that. But part of the reason is because I was intimidated by that idea of sales.
Yeah.
And most of the broadcast salespeople I'd known in Wichita were not necessarily people I wanted to be like. There were some that literally were kind of the, twist your arm and press here, sign hard for copies. And I'm like, that's not me. But what I found...
I bet you could throw down if you needed to.
Maybe. What I kind of found though in broadcast sales there was that it wasn't about selling that thing. It was about solving a business owner's problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be able to be solved through television and helping more people know what that company's products or services were that filled their need.
Yeah.
And so all the times that I had sat across the table at Rent-A-Center or Pizza Hut and had a conversation with the VP of marketing about why I was envisioning a script or a project that kind of communicated this in this manner, I understood later that was selling. That was selling the idea and the solution.
Yeah.
And so I did pretty well in broadcast sales, to the extent, and at the same time, Ed had joined the TV station in Roswell back in production,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean his production skills were always just wicked good. And the station hub in Albuquerque, I think, kind of began looking at what was happening in Roswell and went, we want those folks up here.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably kind of solidified. We put together a project down there that we called FireCam, and it was new infrared technology at the time. And
Yeah, Ed
we
talked
thought
about
every
that last
fire
week.
department should have one of these.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had put together a kind of a promotional plan and went and sold sponsorships to the waste isolation pilot plant and some of the large mines down there to help us tell the story of these fire cams and raise money to purchase them, to put them in the fire departments in Hobbs and Artesia and all the places where there are mines and oil and gas,
Yeah.
to help firefighters in dark places, in homes that are on fire, find where a body, where a person has walked through, like a child, to hide in a closet, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we put fire cam together, and that kind of got the attention. And Albuquerque said, "We want you up here."
Yeah. If anyone has any questions for Kim on her experiences growing up in South Dakota, or any kind of marketing questions, we are going to take those at the end. So you worked at a TV station here in Albuquerque for how long?
I was a salesperson for 5 years,
Uh-huh.
and then I became the local sales manager for 5 years.
Wow.
Learned a lot.
Yeah. What made you want to move on to another position? And in this case, the position was starting at Edit House Productions and Ad House Advertising.
I referred earlier to that power of communication, and the thing I saw often in the sales side of things is the power of a well-planned commercial and a well-bought media schedule to help increase a company's business. And I loved that. I loved seeing that that something that could be created could drive traffic in and improve a company's revenue. But over time, as a sales manager, the corporate philosophy to me was becoming just get the sale.
Yeah.
Increase the revenue. And I mean, we had years that we increased revenue by 12, 18%.
Wow.
It was huge growth. And, the station had started out as the internal saying that I remember hearing was a 4th place station in a 3-place market.
Wow.
I remember, having extended conversations with the media buyer for McDonald's, trying to get our news product bought. And I remember her saying, "You don't have a 3 in your late news in my demo, and I cannot buy you until you do." And
Jeez.
the station was making great strides at that time. Bill Anderson came in as the new general manager. I think his philosophy and his his leadership changed that station. But there was still a corporate owner, and I just kind of got to the point of questioning if my priorities fit into that. I used to tell our salespeople, on any given day, I think our job is 49 or 51. And by that, I meant if today your priority is 49% working on the station's benefit and 51% working on the client's benefit, that's okay. There may be another day where it's the other way around, but it shouldn't be, a 70-30. You're working for the station and 30% working for the client.
Yeah.
And it kind of got to where that was getting out of balance for me. And by that point, Edit House was approaching 5 years old. And it was a very scary thing to think about, leaving a very good job where I was paid well. I liked what I did. I loved what I did. I just wasn't sure the long-term priority was meshing as well in my head. And so in early June of 2005, I left the station. I think that was a totally unexpected thing for my colleagues.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I came to be part of Edit House officially.
Wow. Let's dig a little bit into what exactly we do, because everybody hears Edit House Productions and they think, oh, you do editing or you do videos, but there's so much more to that in our other company, Ad House Advertising. Let's talk a little bit about those services that we offer and why they're important to clients.
Sure. The focus that we have really is we're a business to business company. We really don't do anything that is for a consumer. And Edit House began in 2000, actually, the day before Thanksgiving in 1999. But the business license was 2000. And so Edit House began on the video production side, and it just began to spin off. We would have a client that would say, I need a logo developed. Can you do that? And Ed's graphic skills were, yeah, I can do that. Mm-hmm. And then we had a client that wanted us to take over media buys. And so we said, well, yeah, we can do that. And so the breadth of the company expanded greatly in those first 5 years. And then when I joined it expanded even more. And so really we are what the industry would call a full service advertising agency. We provide the scope of what a business client might need for their business marketing. And in 2007, we actually ran our first digital campaign. It's hard
Google,
to think
right?
that it was that long ago. Yeah, our first Google search campaign. We began to develop websites because we realized that most websites are not built to really fit what digital marketing needs. And so we kind of realized early on, I think, that the broadcast world was going to change tremendously. Once Google search came out and you could go to the internet and type a question or a keyword query in and get back all this information, it's like, holy cow, is this going to drive a change in television and how people receive information and how they shop. And so we really wanted to master that and kind of set off down the path of digital advertising. And today that's become the key part of what we do.
Yeah.
That's a foundational part for most companies that drives new business to them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge thing.
It's interesting because over the last almost 25 years now, Edit House and Ad House just continue to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
We're continuing to add new services. We're continuing to learn new things that are beneficial to clients' success and making sure that they're able to grow, whether it's graphics or video production, adding on additional services like online advertising through Google.
To have the studio space.
Yeah, the studio space. Now we have a 2,000 square foot studio space that local filmmakers can come out and rent and use our equipment if they so need. But it's just been amazing to be able to see how the company has evolved and grow. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit more about digital advertising and what our capabilities are with Google and our programmatic display.
I think the possibilities are endless. There are so many ways to craft the digital campaigns to really specifically be found, mm-hmm. or to find a good prospect. Search or the pay-per-click ads on Google are more, about being found.
Yeah.
And I think that's just an ongoing thing that we continue to try and master, because Google changes things all the time, and not necessarily for the benefit of their advertisers at mm-hmm. all.
I think there's a difference in what we do with search versus the programmatic display, and in like intent versus awareness
mm-hmm. and opportunity. I think that programmatic display and video and OTT ads and streaming content to reach people is kind of the replacement of TV commercials.
But let's take a step back further. Let's say, what is this Google search that we're talking about? What is it for business owners?
I think it's the foundational part of marketing today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really do. Your website is kind of I always kind of equate it to being a storefront mm-hmm. in a mall that's open 24/7. But if nobody knows your store is in the mall, they're not going to go to the mall.
Yeah.
So a website is vital. But just building a website does not mean people are going to find it or find that company's products or services at all. And SEO has a role.
Absolutely.
I think SEO is an important part of a website, but the power, I think, of increasing business is through search ads.
So for those who don't know, Google search, you go to the internet and you have an intent on finding dog food. Right, you want to find the best dog food, so you search in Google for best dog food near me, and advertisers, our clientele, were able to place ads in Google search, the search mm-hmm. ads that come up on the top that say, buy here. Here's mm-hmm. the best dog food, and so that is, when we're talking about intent, that is like mm-hmm. a direct way of getting clientele's mm-hmm. conversions and
the idea that intent leads somebody right to your website is just awesome.
Yeah.
But depending on how the ad is written, we try to match the intent of that online user, mm-hmm. and so there's a lot of work kind of behind the scenes in crafting the ad.
Yeah.
And in trying to write it in such a way to also omit those that we don't want accidentally clicking, because there's no cost until there's the click.
Yeah. But the thing with Google search is it's very bottom of the funnel. People mm-hmm. are actively searching for your product or service.
Absolutely. And it can drastically change market share.
Yeah.
There have been a number of times over the years. These are some of my favorite moments. I would much prefer this situation than to winning an award. I love it when we have started a new client and their digital campaigns are doing really well. I mean, we can see the data and go, well, this looks really great. We're looking at this number of conversions and a great conversion rate that's well above industry averages and all that.
Yeah.
But that moment when a client calls and says, hey, Kim, things are going along really well to the point that I need to hire more people to handle the volume of business. Can you turn down the volume just a little bit on the ad spend until I can add more staff?
Yeah.
I love that moment.
There was one of our clients that came in probably 10 years ago and had, 3 or 4 employees and was getting ready to close down. And they came in kind of as, I think, kind of a last-ditch effort.
It was.
Of marketing. And today they have, I think, over 100 employees.
It's actually 150.
Wow.
Because
3 different companies, right?
They've separated into 3 companies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
they're still growing. And there's still a lot ahead.
Yeah, expanding into different states and stuff. But that's the power of marketing, and it's really been an honor for us to be able to be a part of that, because that's really that's I think Ad House Advertising's main goal is that return on investment for our clients. It's not we're going to sell you this number of keywords for this amount of money. We're much more invested in the results that the advertising.
Absolutely. And there are agencies, very very well respected, very well run agencies that focus more on branding or on public relations methods in order to kind of change a marketplace. And I think they do a great job, and there is a place for that. The companies that we tend to work with are small and medium-sized businesses who are selling a product or a service. Often it's service-based. Branding's important, but they need customers.
Yeah.
They need clients. And I think that's where we just really have found the expertise. We look at, where are you and where do you want to go next, and how are we going to help you get there through tangible things. And
Through
I
the
think
Google
we do
search
a really great job at the digital marketing side of it.
Absolutely. So there's the intent-based search with Google of people actively trying to find your service or product. And then can we talk? We have about 5 minutes left, but can we talk a little bit about what the programmatic is and how that differs from and kind of a stance of this is brand new. What is this? What is programmatic advertising? So
imagine that you go to a website, and it might be a local news station, or it might be ESPN.com or HGTV.com. Most websites today that are not a private business have ad space built within them. And so, HGTV has ad space along the top and the sides of their website. And they try to sell their own ads in that to their advertisers.
Yeah.
But all of the extra is available for other advertisers.
And we'll think about how many millions of users are going to HGTV.com.
Yeah. And so the ads that are placed there are usually called banner ads or display ads. And the inventory options for those sites has kind of merged with all of the information that we know about the users visiting those sites.
So we're not tracking what site someone necessarily is going to. We're tracking the user's ID.
Right. So the idea of programmatic digital advertising is to take what we want to create as a targeted pool of good prospective customers. And that might be by household income or geography, or are they parents of school-aged children? Do they have a history of purchasing cruises, for example? There's all kinds of things that is known about us from our purchase history, our shopper loyalty programs, our credit card purchases, where we live, what we do. And so all of this data in aggregate, not by individual IP address or personally identifiable information, but all of this is known. And so we can set criteria for what we want as a pool of prospective customers and build that and then direct that banner or display ad to that group with very fine granularity, very fine. And so that is very different from search. The intent is not the same. These users are up the funnel a bit. They're good prospects. They may be in market. If someone is looking for a vehicle, or if you go to a website for a cruise company, that tells the internet world you're in market for a vehicle or a cruise.
And so you're going to be targeted with those display ads.
You bet.
Oh, yeah.
and in a very short period of time. And then there's remarketing. There's ways to touch people with video ads, both in websites, kind of in stream, or through streaming platforms. We insert ads on Hulu and Apple TV and Sling and all kinds of things.
All
but
the
it still
broadcast.
is directed to the type of person that we want. And that's really become a big change. Where broadcast, that ad is going to everyone who's a viewer of that program. Mm-hmm. And, maybe 10% of them might be in market for a particular product category. The difference in online is we can be fairly certain that we're approaching like 90 to 100% accuracy. This person is in market. Yeah. And so the waste of ad dollars is practically nothing.
Well, and then we're able to track conversions and all kinds of metrics. We have a couple of questions.
Uh-oh.
Yes. First, I just wanted to say that if you or your business needs any help with marketing, advertising, ad house advertising, you've heard can do everything from videos, commercials, documentaries, to graphic design for business cards, flyers, everything print related. We're doing website development, SEO. We're doing reputation management. I couldn't think of it. Through reviews and responding to reviews. And then we're also doing online advertising through Google and then programmatic display. Let's get to some questions. We have just a couple minutes left. I have an interview I have to go do with someone.
We're adding another person.
We're expanding. With that, also, if you are interested and an actor, we have an open casting call for an upcoming commercial with a injury attorney here in New Mexico. So if you are
check our Facebook page.
Check our Facebook page for all the information. So let's get to some questions. First, my question: how did growing up on a ranch in South Dakota, what part of that have you? How did you get here? What part of your life in South Dakota brought you here, and what have you learned? Thinking back to South Dakota ranches, what did you learn from that, and how do you apply it to every day here at House Advertising?
Well, I guess what comes to mind, Matt, is when there's work to be done, you keep going. You get it done. This is not a job that I leave at 5:00 every night. I have the respect of what needs to get done for our clients means that sometimes it's a late night.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think what I also learned from the ranch, and this is something I have struggled with, is don't be afraid. And yet I have struggled with that. The idea of leaving, a job where I was very well paid to join Edit House. Mm-hmm. It's like, Lord, am I doing the right thing? And I think that the answer that he's given has always been, yes, keep going.
Yeah. Another question we have is, what would you say to someone looking to break into the industry fresh out of college? And maybe give a perspective on film and also on advertising.
Oh, goodness. I think that demonstrating that you're passionate about what you want to do is just vital. Show you're passionate. Don't just show up to work. Don't just do the minimum. Figure out what you can learn. Be learning all the time.
Yeah.
This industry, particularly on the advertising side, is just changing faster than you can fathom. Not so much on the film production, although you look what AI is going to change in the years ahead, and we're in a time with a lot of change. So find a way into a business, volunteer, be an intern. If you're available for sporadic production assistant jobs, let a company know. Be willing and show up and be passionate.
Yeah. Our last question is, what is your favorite thing about working at Ad House Advertising and Ad House Productions?
Even after 30 years, that's what I say. I've been in advertising is 30 years, because more than that, and I start to feel old. But the thing that I love about it is I still get to learn something new almost every day.
Yeah.
I would probably be a fairly good Jeopardy player because I've been fortunate through our clients to learn a good amount about all different kinds of business.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of I don't know, a jack of all trades. I think it's kind of unusual to be able to produce long format documentaries, which is one of the things I love most. I love that long format storytelling, kind of the historical side, or how a person or a company evolved. I love that storytelling. But to learn something new and take on a new project, take on a new client, and see that client growth and success, that's what I love.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us,
I
Mrs.
made it
Kim
through.
Smith. You did great. This has been another episode of Lights, Camera, Clicks, produced by Edit House Productions. We're very excited that you were able to join us today. We will be producing more of these in the following weeks. If you have questions or comments or ideas, topics that you want us to cover, send us an email. You can reach us at info@edithouse.net. Or you can comment on YouTube or Facebook. So thank you again.
Thank you, Matt. It wasn't terribly painful.
No, this was fun. All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll catch you next time on Lights, Camera, Clicks.